If you're a first-time home buyer in Florida, there are parts of the home buying process that nobody explains clearly. And misunderstanding just one of them can cost you time, money, and even the home you want. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the entire Florida home buying process step by step in plain English so you know exactly what to expect from start to finish. I am a Florida mortgage loan officer and a licensed realtor, so I see both sides of the process every single day. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to buy a house in Florida with confidence, even if it's your very first time. Stay tuned. This video is for you if you've never bought a home in Florida, or if you're moving to Florida, or if you've been Googling how to buy a house in Florida and you still feel confused. And make sure you stay until the end. I'll explain the one step that causes most Florida home purchases to fall apart. Nobody explains this clearly. Pre-approval is not just a formality, it is your foundation. As a mortgage professional, I can tell you this is where most buyers win or lose. So what exactly is a pre-approval and how exactly does it work? A pre-approval is where the lender takes an in-depth look at your profile as a borrower, especially your credit. So your credit history is evaluated. They look at your credit score and how you've paid your obligations in the past. So they're going to do a complete check of your credit history. Next, they're going to be looking at your income. They're going to be verifying your income. So you may be asked to submit certain documents that confirm your income. Next, your assets will be reviewed. When I say assets, I mean the lender wants to know that you have sufficient funds or access to enough funds to actually close the transaction. That means you have access to funds for your down payment and other closing costs that may be required to purchase this property. Okay, so pre-approval is the lender making sure that you actually qualify for this mortgage and that you can actually afford it, and they make a decision about whether or not they're actually willing to fund the purchase of a home on your behalf. Now, if you are purchasing a home in Florida and you need mortgage financing, it's very important that you get pre-approved. This is because sellers want to know that you can actually close on this purchase. They want no surprises. They want to ensure that you will actually get that mortgage and you will actually be able to purchase this house. So having a pre-approval gives that seller the reassurance that they have a strong buyer who has a very high likelihood of actually closing this transaction. So as a part of the pre-approval process, you will be asked to submit certain documents. Certain things like your pay stubs, your W-2s, your 1099s if you are self-employed or if you are an independent contractor. You may be asked to submit your bank statements, your tax returns. These are documents that will verify the information that you put on that mortgage loan application. Having a pre-approval is going to set you up for success. This is the first proactive step that you can take as a first-time home buyer to ensure and greatly improve your chances of getting to the closing table and actually purchasing this house. Once you are pre-approved, the lender is going to issue a pre-approval letter. In that letter, the lender will state how much exactly this institution or that particular lender is willing to lend you. Based on that figure, then you have a sufficient understanding of what price range to shop in. You should never ever start touring homes before you get that pre-approval. I've seen it so many times where buyers start touring several different homes. They're looking at all these different homes. They fall in love with a particular home, and then they find out that they cannot afford, or they find out that a lender is not willing to lend them all that money to purchase that home based on their income, based on their credit. And so you don't want to set yourself up for this type of frustration or this type of disappointment. So I reiterate again, the very first step in purchasing a home in Florida should be to get yourself pre-approved. Now, once you're pre-approved, you're ready to do your home search. This is where your realtor comes in. Now, you want to find a realtor who is very understanding, a realtor who is realistic, a realtor who you can actually communicate freely with. All right, someone who's open to questions and someone who's willing to break down everything so that you can understand every step of the process. So once you've gotten your pre-approval, you found your realtor, you are now ready to start touring these homes. So you may have been looking online, you may be scrolling, looking through all the different websites, you see homes that you like. So now it's time for you and your realtor to get together, discuss the features that you're looking for, the areas that you want to look in, and location is very, very important. So when you're thinking about location, you want to think about things like how close is this location to your place of work? Are you satisfied with where the property is located? You want to look for things like flood zones. Is this property in a flood zone? And if it is in a flood zone, it's gonna mean that you have to pay for flood insurance, and there may be some additional costs, some additional precautions that you have to take. So you discuss with your realtor and make sure that you ask about things like property taxes, because that's going to impact your out-of-pocket monthly expenses once you're making those mortgage payments. Okay, so you're gonna ask about things like property taxes, you're gonna ask about insurance, homeowners insurance, flood zones, things like that. All right, now when you are actually touring these homes, make sure that you're looking not just at the aesthetics of the property, but you're looking for any red flags such as cracked foundations, roof leaks, things like that. Okay, and when you speak with your realtor will guide you along the way. All right, so let's say you have done your tours, you have toured several homes, you have narrowed it down, and now you're ready to make an offer. This is where the ball starts rolling. This is where emotions tend to rise. And you want to control your emotions because those emotions can cost you. When you are making that offer, the type of loan that you actually get is very important, because this is one of the things that sellers look for, right? They tend to prefer some types of loans over other types depending on the particular seller. All right, so when you're making that offer, keep those things in mind. Now, the terms of your offer, you want to think about things like the closing date. Make sure that it's a date that the seller is comfortable with, right? You want to make sure that the terms of your offer are attractive, and this is something that your realtor is very qualified to do. So discuss these things with your realtor. Make sure that if there are any contingencies that need to be written into the offer, that they are clear and that everyone understands the terms of this offer. Now, if you are purchasing property that is in an HOA or in a condo association, make sure that you get those condo association or HOA disclosures. You read through them before you make an offer. Additionally, make sure that if the seller has a property disclosure, if they've signed a property disclosure, that you review that disclosure, right? The property disclosure is where the seller is going to disclose if there are any issues with the property, right? So by law in Florida, the seller must disclose any material defects with the property. And when I say material defects, I'm talking about anything that would affect the value of that property. Okay, the seller must disclose this, right? So when you are working with your realtor, make sure to ask them about the seller's disclosure. The most important thing when you're making an offer is that you want to ensure that you are offering a fair price, that you're not overpaying, or that you're not lowballing the seller so much so that they will not accept your offer, right? So you should be working with your realtor, and your realtor should be providing you with actual market information, actual market data about the prices of homes that are similar to this one that you're trying to purchase. And based on that, those figures, those factual pieces of information, you and your realtor should be able to come up with a competitive offer price that will be attractive to the seller, and at the same time it will reflect the actual market value of this property, so that you are not overpaying for the home and you are not making an offer that is so low that the seller will not consider accepting your offer. All right, so work closely with your realtor. Make sure you understand the numbers, how your realtor may suggest a range that you can offer, and make sure you understand and discuss all of that with your realtor. Make sure that if your property that you're purchasing is in an HOA or is in a condo association, make sure that you are reading those documents, because there are rules, there are regulations. If you live in those communities, you don't want to buy a house and then afterwards you find out that you cannot abide by the rules. Okay, so read all those rules before you sign and make an offer. Okay, make sure the closing timelines, all the timelines they work with the lender's schedule and they work with the seller's schedule. All right, once your offer is accepted, you're now officially under contract, but you're not done yet. Now it's time for your inspections, your appraisal, and underwriting. Now, these are the behind the scene processes of the whole transaction. Most of these things you're not going to be seeing, but they're taking place in the background and they're very important. First off, let's talk about the inspection. Now, the inspection is where you are going to hire a trained and licensed inspector to come into that property that you have chosen to buy, and they will be inspecting all the major systems of this property to make sure that they are acceptable to you as the buyer. So the inspector is looking at things like the plumbing, the roof, the HVAC system, so that's the heating, the AC. They're looking at the electrical system. They are looking at all the major systems in this property to make sure that there are no red flags, nothing that would prevent you from being able to make a wise purchase decision. All right, so the inspector will be looking at foundation issues. So they're looking to see if the foundation is sound. They're looking at the roof. How many years of useful life are left in this roof? So they're looking at the main systems, and the inspector will produce a report that you and your realtor will go through, and this report will tell you about what is working in this property, what's not working, what may need repairs, etc., etc. All right, so you get that inspection. Another thing that happens behind the scenes is an appraisal. Now, this is where the lender is going to send out an appraiser to that property. And the purpose of the appraisal is to establish the fair market value for the property. Now, remember in the earlier part of the transaction where I said, you and your realtor are working together to make sure that your offer is fair. Well, the appraiser is a third party who comes in on behalf of the lender, and they are doing a similar type of analysis like your realtor. They are doing an analysis to make sure that the market value of this property is in line or in sync with the purchase price that you and the seller agreed upon, right? So the purpose of the appraisal is to establish, it's for the lender to be satisfied that the price that you and the seller have agreed on, it agrees with what the market is saying about what that type of property should sell for in the current market. All right, now the appraisal is very important. The main thing we want to see is that the property appraises for or above the purchase price that you and that seller agreed upon. Okay, that's the main thing. That's the main hurdle that we want to get over. All right, we don't want the property to appraise at below the purchase price, because at that point that's going to be a problem. Okay, it's gonna affect the financing. All right, and then underwriting. Now underwriting is also very, very important. This is where your lender is actually now taking a fine-tooth comb, and they are looking at your application. They are verifying everything that you put on that application. All right, they are contacting your employer if you're employed. They're making sure that everything that you put on that application checks out, right? And there's nothing in your history, there's nothing that would prevent them from going ahead and actually approving this loan. Okay, so that's where the underwriter is checking everything, looking at everything, making sure that everything is okay and up to the requirements of this particular lender. Now, when you hear the words clear to close, this is when things start getting real. Clear to close means that the underwriter has done their review and they are satisfied that everything is fine and that this lender can go ahead and approve the disbursement of this loan. Now, at this point, this is where all the final numbers are put together. The lender is looking to make sure that you have funds on hand in your account, ready for your down payment, ready to pay your closing costs, ready to close this transaction. All right, so it is very, very important that throughout this entire process, from beginning to end, that you do not take on any additional credit as a buyer. That is the cardinal sin as a buyer. Do not take out any credit cards. Do not buy any furniture on credit. Do not take anything out on credit once you are under contract. Once you have submitted your loan application, do not, let me say it again, do not take out any additional debts. Do not make any purchases on credit. All right, it's very important. If you do this and the lender finds out, this could jeopardize the entire transaction and the deal can fall out. So this is what you want to avoid at all costs. All costs. All right? Do nothing, no additional credit, nothing to affect your finances. If you have loans that you had before, keep on paying your loans. Change nothing until you get those keys in your hand. All right, so yes, so now the underwriter has given the clear to close. It is time for the closing. It is time for you to get that mortgage, get the mortgage funds. And now is where it's gonna get real. You are this close to owning your own home. Okay, so the final step in this process is the closing. So you've made it through the hard part. You've made it through the appraisal process. You've made it through inspection. You've made it through underwriting. And now the underwriter has issued that clear to close, and the closing is scheduled. Now the closing, when I say the closing, this is just the official date when you're going to sign the documents to transfer ownership from the seller to the buyer. So normally in Florida, you can use either, so the buyer may use either a title agent or an attorney. And this is where on closing day, so on the day when the transaction, when everything comes together, you usually meet. So the buyer goes to the title agent's office or to the title attorney's office, and that is where they sign their documents. So they're signing the mortgage documents, they're signing the deed, they are signing all the papers that are necessary to transfer ownership from the seller to you, the buyer. Okay, so all the signing takes place. This is where you pay, you actually make your down payment, and you pay for your closing costs, and everything comes together. You get the keys to that property. Okay, so this is the exciting part, and this is where you now have become a new homeowner. Congratulations. You have accomplished something great. This is the American dream. You have accomplished it. All right, so that's it. This is the crux of the matter. You have become a homeowner. Congratulations. Now, all that's left to be done is that the title company now has to do their part, where they have to record all this information, the deeds, the mortgage. They have to do their recording on their end, but on your part, you are done. All you need to do now is to get your keys and make arrangements to move into your new home. All right, if you liked this video, if you found it valuable, please subscribe. If you have any questions, go ahead. I would be happy to answer your questions, especially regarding the mortgage process. Anything that you want clarification on, feel free to call me. I'm going to leave my contact number in the description, and I'm also going to leave a link to my calendar where you can actually schedule a free consultation with me so that we can discuss your particular situation and get you in that, get the ball started to get you into that house to make you a home owner in Florida. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you again next week. Be sure to subscribe. Have any questions, have any comments about this video, feel free to leave them in the description box below.